Well, I'm here with Gas Wild, the Duke of Greenwich Village, Lower East Side. Gas, how you doing, man?
Hello, John. I'm doing all
Hello.
right, guys. How the devil are you?
I'm doing bloody good.
Jolly good.
Yes. So, Gas, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit and find out a little about yourself because, you're a very mysterious cat. Don't talk too much, primarily with the music. And you even have a mysterious name, right? And why don't you tell us where'd you get your name? Gas Wild is his
Well,
name.
Gas was a nickname. I was dancing on tables in Munich back in 1971 with a couple of other space cowboys to Jumpin' Jack Flash, and people started calling me Jumpin' Jack Gas. And we went to this party and ended up staying all night, and then I wake up the next day and people were going, "Hey, Gas!" Well, Gas. After about 500 people called me Gas, it kind of stuck, And then the Wild, when punk started, that was 71. When punk started happening in England, I was a drummer, and I decided to call myself Tommy Wild. Because my real name's Tom, and so I figured Tommy Wild was a cool stage name. And I helped form the Embryonic Pretenders. And after they put their first record out, they got interviewed in the NME in England, New Musical Express. And Jimmy, the guitarist, said that the original drummer was Gas Wild. And when I saw Gas and Wild together in the music press, I figured that's my name from now on.
Yeah, so it's stuck.
Yeah.
And so, where were you born?
A place called Hereford in England. It's in the West Midlands, near Wales. It's near mid to South Wales. And
Is that where those cows
the Hereford Bulls.
From?
You know the old Homestead restaurant downtown?
Yes.
That's a Hereford Bull.
Right, they're kind of black and white.
No, they're brown and white.
Brown
and cream.
Yeah.
Kind of color. They're really nice. My aunt used to, she wasn't a real aunt, but I called her aunt. She was a friend of the family. She used to breed them when I was little. She had prize bulls. They're amazing.
And were you raised in the same town most of your life?
Yeah, I was raised in Hereford, which is a city, but it's like a country market town.
You had a single family house kind of thing?
Yeah,
or was it,
a detached house with a big garden and a huge lawn like the size of an Olympic swimming pool. It was a beautiful garden, great to grow up in. My parents were keen gardeners and had we had it was a Victorian house, and they had a Victorian greenhouse with lots of exotic plants, and it was great. I had a happy childhood.
You had a happy childhood?
Yeah, I came from a very loving family, no abuse or anything like that.
So as you grew up, you were basically a happy kid, not too complex.
Yeah, I just like to play with toys, and
Had your family? Did your parents? Were they from England?
Yeah, they were both English. Although I could have Welsh roots because Edwards could be English or Welsh. I'm coming from like 18 miles from the border. I might have some Welsh.
I'm not sure people in America understand the difference between Welsh and English, other than Welsh are kind of cheap from that kind of.
Well,
the Welsh are dead.
England is England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland are all part of the United Kingdom, and they're actual countries, and they have languages. Welsh has their own language. Wales has its own language.
Well, isn't the Prince?
Prince Charles is the Prince of Wales.
Wales, right? Huh. So,
and
country's been together long enough for him to be Prince of that.
And when Prince William, when he becomes king, his son will be Prince of Wales. The Prince of Wales is the son of the current heir. So Prince Charles is Prince of Wales now. And then when the Queen dies and he becomes king, William will become Prince of Wales. And then when he becomes king, his son will be Prince of Wales.
In the United
Prince
States...
of Wales is a king, basically.
King to be.
King to be, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, in America we study U.S. history, but it's a pretty short subject.
Yeah, well, it's a young country.
Right. When you're growing up, do you study all about English history?
Yeah, and I studied American history at school as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of history you have in England.
Oh yeah, I did all right in history actually. I didn't do really well academically. I was in the cathedral choir and I worked very hard in that, but I didn't do too well academically. I wasn't
What's
really.
that, Church of England
Yeah.
Cathedral? Yeah.
I won a scholarship to the school because of my voice. I had to take a maths English exam. I took the voice trial in the morning and I passed. Then in the afternoon I had to take maths English and I failed maths. And the choir master wrote to my dad and said that I had an exceptional voice and that he noticed I failed math. Could he suggest private tuition in the summer and then take the exam in December?
What grade are you talking about here? What grade level?
Well, I was 10 at the time.
10 at the time, yeah.
And so I ended up joining the choir. The second time round I passed, with flying colours. So I won my scholarship. But I was a term behind. I started the school in the January. I was a term behind and I never caught up. And then they kept me down. I just didn't do well. I kind of lost interest. I was good at English and history and all right in art and that. But I wasn't any good at maths.
I'm just curious what England is like when you're 10, 12, 14. Do they have jocks and is there a demarcation between the jocks and the...
Yeah, it's the same thing. It was a school. They had like the school teams, the rugby team, the cricket team.
You played rugby, you played cricket.
Yeah, we didn't play soccer.
Didn't play soccer.
We played rugby. Rugby was the winter sport. Cricket was the summer, and then athletics in the spring.
But you never played. Did they play basketball back when you were a kid?
No.
Football. I mean, our kind of football they didn't have. Right?
No, they didn't have that.
Yeah, they had tennis, of course.
Yeah,
I guess
tennis
is invented by English, as far as I can tell. Golf. I guess they have golf. The Scottish had golf.
Yeah, but I never played golf. They didn't have it at school. It wasn't like a school sport.
Was sports a big deal over there, or?
Well, yeah, but as I said, at my school, I think all public schools. Public school is private school. In England, a public school is a private school. Although it sounds like it's not, but it is. A public school is a private school.
I don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, that's what they call private school, public school.
Well, that's a bit baffling for us. What do you call us? Over the pond. We're not too hip to this. Public is private. All right.
And they all play rugby, and I wouldn't send my kid to a public school.
A public school was
private. It's a private school. You have to pay to go to it.
Oh, okay.
But I won a free scholarship.
Well, doesn't the government have schools, just regular old schools?
Yeah, it's the government. It's a direct grant.
What do most people go
to? Grammar schools or secondary schools.
You have grammar school?
Grammar school is like public school. It's like you can get a good education. Well, I guess you can get a good education at any school, but...
And are you required to, go to a certain level in England?
Yeah, you take your O levels, ordinary levels, and then A levels, advanced. And then you go to college or university college if you pass.
Only certain people go on to college. It if they get results.
Only if they get their A and O levels.
Huh. So not everybody's entitled to just go to college, huh?
Well, maybe they can go to colleges, universities. You've got to get accepted. And that's like here, right?
Yeah.
You have to,
is it real competitive to go to? Is there a big pecking order in the university?
I don't know. I never went, so I don't know.
You weren't interested in that?
No, I left school when I was eligible for parole. I didn't graduate or anything. I left at 15. I just wanted to get the fuck out.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're able to leave school at 15?
Yeah. I don't know about now, but you could then.
And not get in trouble?
No, well, my headmaster was bent as a 9-bob note, and I was always in trouble, and he had me in there on the last day of term, and he said if my attitude towards school life didn't improve, in the next term, I'm going to personally get rid of you, dear boy.
Huh.
That's what he said to me. And so then, then he said, sit down, little man. He called me little man and little boy and dear boy. And I sat down and he put his hand on my leg and went like that. And I got up and I went, fuck off, you homosexual bastard.
Oh.
And he went purple with rage and said, how dare you talk to me like that? I hope you realise I could expel you for that. And I said, I hope you realise that if this gets out, you're in big trouble, sir.
Oh, really?
Get out of my sight! And I went home and I told Dad what happened, and he sent a letter giving a term's notice of me leaving the school.
Wow. Isn't that some... Well, it's interesting that in 1940 in the United States, only 1 in 4 of people graduated from high school.
Wow.
And went on to college. It was a very small percentage of people.
Graduated.
Most people had gone through the 8th grade. When World War II started, the United States was a completely different country than it is now in 1940. The average education was about the 8th grade. So
how old are you in the 8th grade? How old's that?
You start school when you're 5 or 6. Most people when they're 6, and so that makes you 14
in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a standard thing back then. I'm not sure when that changed. I'm not sure what the difference is now, but I know my first wife's father, he went to the 8th grade and quit. Very common to go to work early. So
my dad left school early as well. I think my dad left school about 12.
Yeah.
And he was very clever. He was academic, very good academically. He had a mathematical brain. He became county treasurer of Hereford, so he must have had a mathematical brain.
Is that right?
Yeah. But he didn't. I think he passed the exam to get to my school, but his parents couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford the fees.
So what did your father do?
He was county treasurer.
Treasurer. That was
of Herefordshire and Worcester County Council.
Well, that's a honourable, trustworthy position.
Yeah.
Holding the money. That's good. And your mom, what did she do? Did she work?
She was a housewife, but she also taught dress sewing and dressmaking at Hereford Tech College and also at village halls at night around Herefordshire.
What kind of relationship did you have with your parents?
I got on great with them. I was the youngest.
You had brothers?
Yeah, an older brother and an older sister. My brother's dead now. I still got my sister. And my brother's 13 years older than me, so I heard Elvis when I was about 3 or 4. And I never looked back. I loved it. I loved the blues, Heartbreak Hotel and all those things.
You were musically educated.
Yeah, at an early age. Yeah. And when I started drumming, he showed me some military drumming, which is great to have it.
When did you first start drumming?
In 1965, when I was 13. I was at boarding school, and the day before school broke up, it was a half day, so the boarders could pack all their stuff up. And we had a cinema at the school. I mean, they pulled a screen down in the assembly room. And on weekends, we always saw the boarders could see movies. And they'd show them the night before school broke up, and they had this band playing like Stone, Chuck Berry songs, Bo Diddley, and stuff I'd heard by the Stones. But this school band was playing all these covers, and I became attracted to the drums. Before then I was drawing guitars on my jotter.
So what kind of music do you first remember hearing?
Well, I heard Elvis.
You think it was stuff from your brother playing at the house?
Yeah, I heard Elvis when I was 3 or 4.
You were born in what, 52?
Yeah, January 52. So I was hearing Elvis records, and then a little later I was hearing Buddy Holly. And, yeah, I was just hearing the records that were out at the day.
Well,
My sister and my brother bought records. So
did you mainly get American music over there? I guess you had a mix of both.
Well, there was a mix of both. But it was up until,
did England have music up until the
yeah,
Beatles?
they had some bands, but it was when the Beatles happened, they really had music changed. And suddenly,
I remember Celia Black was a big...
Cilla Black.
Cilla Black?
Yeah. Well, the Beatles came first, and then she had the same manager. Beatles opened the door. They had
the same manager, right.
And then there was Cilla Black and the Hollies and all the bands.
Well, suddenly, before the Beatles, I'm not sure I knew any English bands.
It was Cliff Richard and the Shadows.
Oh, Cliff Richard, yeah, of course.
He was a Britain's a rock and roller.
Yeah.
And he had a great song called "Move It," which is like when there was a rockabilly revival, every band. It was like Midnight Hour in the '60s. Every band played Midnight Hour. Mm-hmm. Every rockabilly band played "Move It." Mm-hmm. It was a big hit.
And when you were growing up and as a young teenager, did they have a nightlife for teenagers in England, for young teenagers, like 12, 13, 14, 15?
Well, yeah, you could go to cafes. The Wimpy Bar, just like Hamburger, the British version of McDonald's.
Did they have a jukebox and play,
Yeah, if I remember rightly, they had Wimpy Bars and with jukebox cafes, with jukeboxes.
You call them Wimpy Bars?
Yeah, it was called the Wimpy Bar.
Oh,
that was the name of it.
Well, they used to have a Wimpy's because the guy loved hamburgers, like in Popeye, but,
Yeah, the Wimpy Bar was a British hamburger joint.
Oh, that's nice, yeah. But, yeah, you didn't have, did they have, were you guys into a parties kind of scene as when you were very young, 15, 14?
Yeah, I used to go to parties. Yeah, I remember when I was 14 that there was... I hung around with mods and I hung around with beatniks. We all drank in the same cafe and the pubs and that. I started drinking when I was 13 or 14.
Is that right?
Yeah, I used to go in pubs at 14.
Really?
And I'd get served,
Really?
Yeah. Never got thrown out for being underage.
I suppose the drinking age was 18 back then, right?
Yeah. Well, still is.
Still is, yeah. And so you could actually go into a regular club. You looked.
There was a place called the 1600 Club that had good bands playing it. I started going there when I was 14.
Yeah, they seem to have had kind of a youth culture in England, like they did in the United States. The United States was going apeshit, exploding in the 60s. As far as energy and parties and dances and fucking music in the street, dancing in the street. That was the thing. Dancing in the street, 64, 65. They would have bands would show up in the garage, and then you would dance in the garage, and then go out into the driveway, and then spill out into the street, and then the whole fucking neighborhood would show up, and there'd be a dancing in the street party. We used to have those all the time when I was living in Virginia. Every weekend, you had at least one or two.
Yeah, we didn't have that in England.
That was a thing in Virginia. It was a thing. They sang about it. I think the mamas and papas sang about Alexandria, Virginia. They sang about those places. But, so you guys had, you were drinking and partying, I guess, already at a fairly young age.
Yeah, I hadn't started smoking weed there, or hash, but I was drinking. And
did you even know anything about weed when you were 14 years old? Were people smoking weed in 1964 in Britain?
But I didn't know about it then. I found out about weed in 66.
Yeah, it didn't.
I heard people talking
much
about ash. I thought, ash? What's ash? They were talking about hash. And I didn't know, but I kept hearing about it, and I was curious.
It didn't exist much in my world until 66. Till 66. I'm sure it did in some people's worlds, but it was not a popular thing in the media or amongst students.
Yeah, it was pretty undercover until they started busting pop stars, and then it suddenly front page news.
Well, I don't even think Dylan turned on until 64. He even Greenwich Village wasn't a big smoky place back in the early 60s or mid-60s. The mid-60s it started.
Yeah.
I think Dylan turned on
the
64.
Beatles.
And he turned the Beatles on, yeah.
on.
But that was 64, 65, so. But up until that time, you know, it was a pretty unheard of kind of intoxicant. Everybody drank.
Yeah.
And that was what you did. Smoking cigarettes was kind of de rigueur. Everybody did that, right?
Yeah, I started smoking cigarettes when I was really young. I gave it up at 10 and started it again at 12.
Wow, you gave it up at 10?
10, yeah, for a couple of years.
Oh, that's funny.
I think I started when I was 6.
Oh, my goodness.
At first, you know, you don't inhale, but then after a while you learn how to inhale. And,
I take it your parents smoked?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were around. And my parents did, too. So my parents they would have the cocktail hour every day at 5 o'clock. You know, my dad would get home about 5:10. Cocktail hour.
By 5:50.
That's what they did. And in America, that was what everybody did. The president of Roosevelt had a big thing about the cocktail hour because every day they had a cocktail hour. Eleanor did not like to do it. She wasn't a drinker, but his girlfriend, Missy, liked to do it. That's why he loved her. So they had a cocktail hour every afternoon. And my parents did the same thing. I suppose that was just the culture of the time. Around the world, I suspect.
In England, people, they didn't like have cocktail hour, but, you know, whenever on Sundays or Saturdays, people would come by for drinks in the morning before lunch.
Really?
Yeah, we'd sit in a lounge and we'd have, you know, my parents, I started drinking when I was really very young. They let me have a sherry, you know, when I was 5 or 6, I think. So I'd been drinking a bit. And then occasionally I'd go and explore what was in the drinks cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was, I think, 13, I started to drink.
I had my first drink when I was in the 6th grade. I guess I was 13. And it was at a wedding, and they had punch, and I drank the punch. And then, after that, we all got together and went into a car. You know, one of the families were driving in. We went over to Juarez, Mexico, and saw Bobby V perform at one of the Juarez nightclubs. And then we went in the back, and I got Bobby V's autograph. Yeah, that was the first and probably about the only autograph I've ever gotten. Yeah. And that was my first night of drinking. I remember that vividly. Fun time. So then the Beatles came out. What happened? Did you remember when the Beatles first came out?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in '62, I remember seeing one of the pop programs, forget what it was, but they were on doing Love Me Do, and I liked it. And then Please Please Me came out, and I think the flip side was From Me to You. I remember hearing that just before Christmas of '62. And then that's around the time I passed my exam to get to the school. So yeah, I started the school in the January, and it was the worst winter since 1947 in England. Like loads of snow.
You're talking about 64?
No, 63, 62, 63.
So the Beatles kind of had they came out with something in 63 in England.
Oh, they were huge before they came to America. They were already like a household name in Britain and Scandinavia, and I think like all the rest of the world apart from America. I mean, they were popular here too.
You know, I seem to remember when I was...
They've been going a full over a year, playing to sold-out crowds and that before they went on the Ed Sullivan Show.
It's funny. I said to somebody, I remember hearing the Beatles when I was 10 years old, 1962. I thought I remembered hearing them because I had a thing that I was afraid. I had nightmares about bees.
Oh.
And they were attacking me, you know? So the doctor told me, get yourself a radio and sleep with the radio on. You know? So I slept with the radio on
heard the Beatles.
My whole life from age like 9 on. And so I had music on all night. And we'd tune into this station that played rock and roll music, originating out of Oklahoma City. And I thought I heard the Beatles. I have a vivid recollection of
Yeah,
hearing
you could very
them,
well
I think, in '62. But everybody says, nah, they didn't, they weren't out in '62. But
Well, they
They
had
were
records.
certainly
They had
in-
records out.
they were certainly playing in '62 in
Yeah.
Hamburg and all those clubs.
Well, no, in '62 they were back playing. They were playing in England. They'd already been to Hamburg, done the Hamburg trip. By '62 they were gigging up in
The Cavern.
the Cavern and various places.
I met somebody
And
who
then
was
they
a
got their
waitress
record
at the
deal,
Cavern.
and their management,
Yeah, so when they came out,
Well, it just like it was suddenly like a whole new scene.
well, I mean,
Music
it was a
suddenly
very
came-
sudden thing in
Yeah,
the
it just
United
happened
States.
overnight, and that's all of a sudden like that.
Yeah.
There's this great music, and they open the floodgates. Suddenly, there's loads of bands around.
Up until that time, we'd been listening to the Beach Boys, and of course, Buddy Holly was from Texas,
Yeah,
in the
and he
area I was
died in
from.
'59, right?
Right, and then, there were all the rock and rollers. Everybody listened to them. My sisters
But
played those all
there
the
was
time.
no rock and roll really happening then. The rock and rollers had kind of gone tame. Little Richard had got religion, and it was a weird time when
And Elvis was in the movies.
in the army, wasn't he?
Well, '57, I think he was in the army. I happened to be over in Germany, stationed with my dad in Stuttgart when he was over in England. My sister was a sock hopper, bobby socker,
Mm-hmm.
and they would dance to the Beatles all the time. And he was over there when we were over there, and I think she was probably the same age as Priscilla, about 15 when she was over there. Yeah, but I remember when the Beatles first hit in the United States in pretty much January, February of '64. And that's when Meet the Beatles came out. I know they had an English album that was slightly different than that.
Well, all the albums were different up until right near the end. They always had different titles and different tracks.
Yeah. Well, when Meet the Beatles came out,
See, Meet
Beach
the Beatles,
Boys and Chuck
Meet the
Berry were the
Beatles-
thing with me.
Yeah.
That's all we listened to. We listened to Chuck Berry. When we go to the jukebox and we had Jimbo's with the ice cream. After a game, they would give us free banana split if we'd hit a home run. So we would go to Jimbo's after the games, and then we would and then we would play the jukebox, and it was always Chuck Berry or the Beach Boys were the thing for me. Those two groups. And the Beach Boys were real big. And I think they were quite thrown off when the Beatles came out. Because when the Beatles came out, everything changed. Suddenly the Beatles had all the number one hits, and I think they had 5 number one hits in a row, and top 5. I mean, they were just played all the time. And I love their music. I sat down and I listened to the Beatles music from the first album on. We would have these dance parties where we'd play we would play Fats Domino. We'd play a lot of the earlier music, the twist music, and but when the Beatles came out, they completely took over.
Yeah, they did.
And so then it became British music for the next 3 or 4 years,
Yeah,
almost
the British
nonstop.
invasion.
Almost nonstop British music. Mercy Beats, all those groups. And Stones, of course, came out just a few months after
The Beatles.
the Beatles. And then, of course, Dylan was already out, but then he became really well known because then he had some top hits. And that was kind of the beginning of music in my world. The beginning of the music I really wanted to play.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I'd always wanted to be a surfer, like the Beach Boys, but I didn't care to play the music. But as soon as the Beatles came out, I wanted to learn to play it.
Right.
You know, and the Rolling Stones, you could actually play those, you know, because they weren't that difficult. So that's when you got your drums, huh?
Well, yeah, in '65 I got my drums.
How about a guitar? Were you into guitar?
I couldn't play. I mean, I liked guitars. Up until, when I got my drums, I just used to draw guitars. But then I got the drum kit, so I was into drums then. Taught myself listening to records.
Well, your parents were brave to get you a drum set. They were very honorable.
Yeah, the chief of police one day I had a room in the top of the house where I practiced. And one day the chief of police was walking past. My dad was doing some gardening, and he said, "Ringo, not at it tonight."
You know, I mean, I got a trumpet in the 6th grade. My parents, after listening to me try to learn to play for about a few weeks, they said, "Why don't you switch to the guitar?"
So you did?
I did. Yeah, they got me a guitar. But yeah, you know, you had drums. I had a friend that was a drummer in the 8th grade, and I always wanted to know what happened to him because he was quite good. And his brother was, you know, gigging and everything. But I suppose when you were younger, you didn't have a lot of places to play, huh?
No, there weren't a lot of places.
Because you didn't have the garage band scene that like a lot of people here had that. How about dances at school? Did they have that kind of shit?
Yeah, they had school dances, and then there were youth clubs.
You had youth clubs?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's where we used to play.
Oh, so you would have a youth club where you'd go and you could dance and
play.
And listen. Yeah.
Listen to bands play and play. If you had a band, you could play them. So, yeah, that's...
Well, that was a big thing in our world. We had teen clubs. We went to every weekend. That's what we did. Of course, my dad was in the military, so they had to create these centers where all the kids could entertain themselves because they didn't blend into the community. So you had to have a place where people could come to entertain the kids. So we did that. And we always had local young kid bands that played. And a lot of people, that's where they got, you know, learned to play. So then you got your drums. Did you ever take lessons in drums?
No.
You learned military drumming a little bit?
Yeah, my brother showed me the rudiments, the basic rudiments of military drumming. So I did. I just have a good ear, and I'd go and I'd listen to records, play along to them, and then I'd go to gigs and watch the drummer. I think the very first proper beat. But, you know, I could play Wipeout and Apache.
Yeah, I used to play Wipeout on the drum.
Wipeout's the first thing I learned on the tom-tom. That's it. So I learned to play that.
I had a friend that could play that too, and I looked up to him, man. I said, "Wow, you can do that."
Yeah.
So that ain't easy.
No, it's just a workout.
Yeah, it's a fucking real workout.
So I was playing that, and then I learned there was this song by the Shadows, and the beat was. Once I learned that, I was on my way. I never looked back.
You know, I used to do the drum. I learned one beat. That's a funny thing you say, because if you got one beat, you can play.
Yeah.
And I had one beat. And
once I learned that, then it made it a lot easier to play. It opened the door. Then I could really play along to the Beatles and the Stones and everybody's. You know, I used to buy 45s.
Well, drums is an unusual thing, because if you got rhythm, you can cut the mustard. That's all right. If you got rhythm,
I naturally had the rhythm, and so I picked up drums easily.
Yeah. So then, Now, I don't know anything about your rock and roll history. I know that it's been written about. People have talked about how you were instrumental with Chrissie Hynde and all that.
Yeah,
Kind of stuff.
Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead. He was friendly with Chrissy, and she was looking for a drummer, and he recommended me
Well, where was she living at the
in
time?
London.
So, what age were you at that point?
This is 74.
Had you been working? After you finished school, I guess you went out and had to work. No.
Yeah, I was 24 in 76 when well no actually I was 24 when I played with Lemmy in the rehearsal room. We both rehearsed at the same place, and our drummer didn't show up.
Did you have a band at that time?
Yeah.
When did you first
I
form
had a band
band?
called the Cyanide Sweeties, and we rehearsed in the same place as Motorhead did. And one night, it was the summer of '76. It was really hot summer in England, and our drummer didn't show up, and Lemmy was hanging out. And they had lockers where bands could leave their gear locked up. So Lemmy said, "I'll get my bass," and he sat in on bass. I was a drummer, and he played bass, and we clicked. I was just his acquaintance up until then, and then like
Who
after
was Lemmy?
Lemmy was the bass player from Motorhead. It's like a huge famous rock star who
Okay.
died a few years ago.
I know the group Motorhead.
Motorhead, yeah. Well, he was the leader, the bass player, singer, and he was my friend. And but up until then, we'd just been acquaintances, and he really liked the way I drummed. And afterwards, he gave me his phone number. We became friends. We used to meet at the pub at lunchtime, and we'd go back to his place. So after that, we became good mates and remained so until he died. You know, he was like my brother from another mother.
Mhm.
And so Chris, in '78, Chris is looking for a drummer, and Lemmy recommends me. And I rehearsed with her for about a month, just the two of us. And then I went home to Hereford for Easter, and I ran into Pete Fondon, the bass player, the original bass player from the band. And I said I was playing with this American chick in London, and she had a deal, and it was good songs. And it so happened he was living in London. So I went back and told Chrissy I'd met my old friend, who's a great bass player. So we got together, and we carried on rehearsing for about another month and a half, too. Meanwhile, they start fucking each other, and then the next thing, I get fired. And like, it's weird. I don't know exactly why I got fired. I seem to think that the manager used to manage Johnny Thunders, and Johnny was a handful. And the fact that I played with Johnny, he might have thought that I was a handful, that I had a drug problem or whatever, which I didn't. But you know, we drank. We all drank. Chrissy drank. Pete drank. We all drank. Smoked hash. But 3 days before I got fired, because she said she was so happy she found me and Pete, that she figured she could really put this band together. And then, like, I get a phone call from the manager. I'm working, right? And I get a phone call. Hi, Cass. Hey, Dave. How you doing? I got bad news. What? You're out the band. What do you mean? Why? You're doing too much. What do you mean doing too much? I said, listen, Dave, I don't accept it from you. I have to hear it from Chrissy, and I hung up on him. And so then it was arranged that Chrissy, me, and Pete would meet up. And Pete showed up, and Chrissy didn't. And Pete lied through his teeth, claiming he didn't know anything about it.
Maybe Pete was jealous. Maybe he was afraid you were horning in on Chris.
Or whatever. I wasn't. But, you know. But he said he didn't know anything about it, which was bullshit, and it really pissed me off. And for a while after that, I'd run into them and I'd ignore him. I'd talk to Chrissy and totally ignore him. Anyway, I got over it.
What was the scene like when you were in London at that time?
It was a good scene. It was a good club scene.
Well, I mean, were you? I assume you had some job, right?
Yeah, I worked in a liquor store, Victoria Wine, just behind the counter.
And then it was just to subsist, and then you would, so that you could go out at night, that kind of thing.
Yeah, score hash and
Yeah.
food, you know, pay the rent. And my wife had a job too.
Oh, you were married.
Mm-hmm.
When did you get married?
In '76. To a Brazilian girl.
Huh.
So then After I got fired, I carried on drumming a bit, but then 2 years later, Lemmy recommended me to this other band, a French band, who were looking for a drummer. And we rehearsed a couple of times, and then we did some demos, and then we took the hovercraft to France in the middle of the night. We drove down to Folkestone and then took a hovercraft, and then drove to Paris all in the middle of the night. And then the next day we did a week at the Shivers Club where I played 2 years earlier with Johnny Thunders, same club. We did that week's residency, and at the end, the singer was embarrassing. I was a drummer, and the singer really was embarrassing, and I told him that. I said, listen, I can't play with this guy. I'm going to leave. And they fired that guy and kept me. So we'd agreed that the singer, one of the guitarists, would do the lead vocals, and I'd do backing vocals from the drums, which I was already doing. And so then the next day we do a recording, one original song which he sang, and Slipping and Sliding, the Buddy Holly song, which I sang, or Little Richard. Who wrote that? Was it Buddy Holly? I don't know. Whoever. We did that. We did a version of that, and I sang it. And the record company liked it, and they said, well, why don't you do an album? So the studio was free, so we went in a great state-of-the-art studio. Yes, I just vacated it. In Montmartre. So we went in and we did all about, I drummed on the backing tracks. And then the singer would the guitarist would do some vocals, and then I'd do some. And then one day I had the cans on, I just made this decision that I could sing much better than this guy, and I want to be the singer. I want to find a drummer, and I'm going to be the singer. So I told them this, and they weren't really into that. Well, no, they were into it. The bass player wasn't, because he liked the way I drummed. But, I'd already done all my drumming on the record, so now I'm doing the vocals. And then finally he said, yeah, you must sing. Mm-hmm. So I'd been in Paris 9 weeks, and I really wanted to get back to London. I suggested that we go relocate to London and look for a drummer there. So off I went. And the bass player showed up a couple of days later, and the brothers never showed up. And I had a fight with my wife whilst I was in Paris, and she'd gone off to Brazil for a holiday and had come back, but we hadn't paid the rent, and we'd been thrown out of our apartment in our absence. I was in Paris, she was in Brazil, and they put all our stuff in storage, threw us out. So I had nowhere to live, and I couldn't. My wife was staying with a friend in a serviced apartment, with 2 single beds, she and her friend, this girl. So I didn't really want to stay there, or I didn't know whether I was really welcome there. So I ended up crashing at who would turn out to be my manager's place. And I was playing in the tapes I'd done, and he kept saying, can you play guitar? And I said, no, I can play a bit, but I'm not good enough to play on stage, which I wasn't then. But he kept saying, you sure you can't play guitar? And because he was managing this band, the Lightning Raiders, and they were reforming as well. And so in the end, I knew all the guys. He persuaded them to get me as the lead singer in the Lightning Raiders, and they got another guitarist in to take the guitar, because the guy had left. It was a 4-piece with 2 guitarists who sang and played guitar on their own songs, I think. So I joined as a singer, and they got another guitar player in, and we recorded an album, and he paid for it, and then ended up getting a major deal with Island Records and did huge gigs, Reading Festival, 25,000 people. That was fun. So
that was during, I guess, I didn't know I still don't know who Johnny Thunders is.
Well, he's like a underground. He didn't have a lot of huge hit records, but he's an underground star. He came from the New York Dolls, who were famous, And then,
he was in the New York Dolls, yeah.
And then he was he left. Him and Jerry, the drummer, left, and then they formed Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers. And they were a great band too. And I auditioned. I wanted to audition for them when Jerry left, and I read an interview in the papers, in the music papers, that he wanted to find an American replacement for Jerry, so I never bothered auditioning. So fast forward a few months, and it's Christmas, and Lemmy invites me to a party at Dingwall's, which is a great club in London. I think it's closed now, but it was a great club. Good hang, you know. And Lemmy gave me the invitation was a big button with cut-out letters saying "Falling Over gets you accepted." So Lemmy and I go up to the club, and I go in, and he plays One Armed Bandits, so he's off doing that. And I went and got a drink, sat at a table, and it turns out I'm sitting at a table with Johnny Thunders. So I start chatting to him, and I said, I was going to audition for you when Jerry left, but he said he wanted an American replacement, so I never bothered. He gave me his phone number. He said, I got something coming up in France. Give me a call. So I went back, and I went and bought the Heartbreakers album the next day, and I went home and I played it on the couch with drumsticks. I learned all the record on. And yeah, I got a gig with Johnny. We did a week at the Gibus Club in Paris, and it was great. I mean, he was a huge star there, so we were treated well, and that was great.
Well, I missed out on that New York early punk scene with the New York Dolls because I was in Hawaii at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think we had a record player.
Right. Well, then you didn't know, you weren't even aware of them. Then.
We were on the beach, and we played music all day and all night.
You know, they weren't famous.
But we didn't
they were known in New York. They were known wherever they.
I heard of them. I'd read about them in Rolling Stone. They were famous because of their outfits.
Yeah, they were famous for being famous.
I guess it's 73, 74.
73.
Yeah.
When their first record. And but yeah, they were like cult figures.
Yeah, in New York City.
Yeah, and London, you know, and I guess LA and maybe like they were known, I guess, everywhere where they, you know, they were known to the rock and roll crowd.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I'd certainly heard of them.
They just didn't have hit records.
Yeah.
They weren't mega.
Yeah, I guess that was an interesting era. But then along came the punk era, and that's when you started really getting gigs. Was during 76,
well, I've been doing gigs before the punk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was more glam then. And then punk happened.
Right, you went through psychedelic, and then it kind of went into glam and offshoot of disco.
But it was always rock and roll while I played, you know. Yeah. I was always into like, danceable rock and roll music. Right. And it was glam for a bit. You know, we dressed glam, you know, flat platforms, makeup, you know, long hair. But the music was always rock and roll. You know? I pride myself in having good taste in music. I wouldn't play anything unless I liked it.
Well, the summer, I mean, we're 76, 77.
That's when the punk.
I came back from Afghanistan, and punk had just exploded in Manhattan. You know, with Max's and CBGB's, and you know, they opened up all the new places in Greenwich Village. So that was the scene that I came back to the United States for. And I must tell you, it was a great scene. It was a beautiful thing. Every night was a different bar with good music. And, well, not always good, but, you know, always enthusiastic.
There's always something to do every night.
I never liked, for instance, Richard Hell and the Voidoids. Those cats, I mean, his name sticks out to me because I know he has sort of a name, some kind of a reputation that lingers. But, man, that guy, I'd go to CBGB's all the time, and the Ramones, I just love them. And you come out from the Ramones, and you would just be glowing. And your ear would be ringing, and you know, and they would play fucking 2-3 times a week, and you know, we'd always go. And then Blondie, of course, and Talking Heads, and then the B-52s come up, and Lou Reed was always playing, John Cale, I mean. So you had a lot of new bands as well that were in Manhattan, and we started living with a cat named Albert Crabtree, who ran Crabtree's, and he created a studio we moved into it. We built this studio with a stage and over in the 38th and 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And all the punks would come there and rehearse. We had a big reel tape recorder. This is in '77. And it was a real lively scene, man. Very lively scene. And you were over in England, I guess, doing about the same thing, huh?
Yeah, it was good times. And then, but then once I became a singer with that French band, and I came back to England, and then the band never followed me. The bass player came, but the rest didn't. Mm-hmm. And then I found myself in this situation, living at the manager's place, and suddenly I'm a singer in a new band. Mm-hmm. That's got great songs, good players, and good gear, you know. And so we recorded an album. Went in and just did it. Did the backing tracks in a 16-track studio in South London, and then we went to the Who studio and did the overdubs and vocals and mixing in Ramport. That was the Who studio. That was great.
And what was the name of that band?
That was Lightning Raiders.
The Lightning Raiders.
And I was the lead singer.
Uh-huh. Was it all original music?
Yeah. I didn't write it. I wrote one song towards the end, one that I'd written in the French band. We started doing it in the Lightning Raiders. But one of the guitarists was a prolific writer, so we had plenty of material. I learned it all. We rehearsed 5 days a week, every day, 5 days a week. We had block booking in professional rehearsals. It's great. We got PDs. It was great.
All right, let's stop this now. We'll take a look at it, see what we got. Then we'll continue on with your music career.
Okie dokie.
I like talking about the background stuff, probably more than the music stuff. Interesting to me to find out what England was like during that formative period that we all went through called teenagerness. Okay, stopping.